Post-spring quarterback rankings have come out. Is Diego Pavia still underrated? We answer next.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. And on this episode, we're going to discuss how I believe that we are still underrating Diego Pavia in the latest post-spring quarterback rankings. Now, I'll say the SEC is tough to rank because there's a lot of good quarterbacks and a lot of things to kind of look at. But I think Pavia is higher than 6 for sure, and I'm going to tell you why here in just a little bit. And then Barton Simmons, GM of Vandy football, was on with the Ultimate College Football Show on 247, his old stomping grounds. And quite frankly, he has me and the Vandy fan base completely fired up. So I'll tell you why on that one. And then we're going to wrap by discussing what's happening in this midweek Battle of the Barrel showdown at Louisville. As I'm recording, it's still happening. So we're going to get some live updates, and this has been kind of one of those back and forth games. A lot of competitiveness there. So thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So here's what I want to discuss, okay? Because when we talk about quarterbacks, there's a lot of things to evaluate. There's a lot of just things, right? When you say, okay, is this guy better than that guy? And, you know, how is he going to be better than him? And all of that stuff. I think it's one of those that's kind of tough to evaluate, honestly. But on the same token, I just feel like you can kind of tell some of the guys have kind of proven it. But, you know, I just think when you look at it, I still think Diego Pavia is being ranked because of the logo on his helmet. And I think 6 is pretty high for most Vanderbilt quarterbacks. I think if you're Vanderbilt and you have a quarterback ranked in the top 6, I think you should be elated. But honestly, I'm not sure I'm totally with these rankings. But then again, anyway, let's discuss. Okay, here's the rankings. Okay, here's the top 6 at least. The others, I think, once you get past 6, are kind of, you know, whatever you want to do, throw darts. But Garrett Nussmeier, number 1, Arch Manning, number 2, and then you have Lenore Sellers, number 3, DJ Lagway, number 4, John Mateer, number 5, and our very own Diego Pavia at number 6. So when you look at these rankings, immediately you're probably like, well, why is Diego Pavia not number 1? He led Vanderbilt to 7 wins with not much on the roster. And he's proven to be one of the best quarterbacks in the entire conference. So, and honestly, let's look at this list. Okay. Garrett Nussmeier, I think, you know, the production speaks for itself. I think what he's bringing back to LSU, and I think what they've done in the portal, I think he's a dangerous enough quarterback, talented enough quarterback. I think he's going to be able to get it done at LSU. You know, I think right now, until proven otherwise, I think he's number 1. Okay, but here's the thing that I struggle with: Arch Manning, not much playing time at Texas, and when he got in against a real defense, he looked shell shocked. So is the experience there? If his name wasn't Arch Manning, would he be number 2? If he was just Arch Jones, would he be number 2? I'm not so sure. If he didn't play for Texas, I'm not so sure that he's number 2. I'm not saying he can't be up there. I'm just unsure. It's unclear because we really haven't seen a whole lot of it, except for like spring games and, you know, that one start I think he had against, I can't remember who it was, but he had a pretty good game. And I think he started against Florida and had a pretty decent game there too. So I think there's a little bit of merit there, but otherwise I don't know that we need to be quick quick to put him at number 2. I do think he's in the upper half, though, for sure. I just don't know exactly where he fits. And make sure you leave in the comments where you think these guys fit. Lenore Sellers, dynamite run guy. I'm not quite sold on him in the pass game. I don't know that he can be a consistent passer. Illinois shut him down as a runner. Couldn't do much else against Illinois. I think the teams that were able to beat him were able to shut him down as a runner and force him into the pocket and become a pure pocket passer, which he is not. That is not his game. Nothing wrong with that. But I think in order to be up in the upper echelon, I think you have to show a little more depth in your game. And not to say he can't improve. It's just kind of a show me type thing. DJ Lagway, show me that you could be healthy. That you have enough talent to be the number 2 guy, or maybe even number 1 guy. I think the talent is there for the number 1 guy. I think he possesses everything that you want. I think the only ability that he struggled with is availability. And if he starts every single game for Florida, I'm not so sure that we're not talking about Florida being one of the top teams in the conference. But he didn't, and I just question his durability and his availability. And I think once you do that, you're looking at a very average team, and DJ Lagway can't really do much for you in street clothes on the sideline, injured. One that I really like, John Mateer. I think this is a legitimate one. He hasn't played inside of this conference just yet, but we know what he's got, and we know what he brings to the table, and we know kind of how he's going to be with his new coordinator, Ben Arbuckle. So I think this is somebody that you have a guy coming in similar to how Pavia came in last season. With his offensive system in tow. I think that helped Vanderbilt get to a situation where they did win 7 games and they were competitive in the 6 losses, except for I think 1 against South Carolina. They weren't all that competitive. But I think you get a quarterback that comes in that knows the system and that can coach everybody up and that can get everybody on the same page very, very quickly. So I think that does have some merit to it. He's a dual threat guy. He's kind of a breakout star, had a really nice season at Washington State. And I think has a coach that has a lot of good pedigree that will be a head coach very, very soon in Ben Arbuckle. So the John Mateer one, I think that one's pretty easy. I think he might even be too low. I think John Mateer might even be too low because I think he has a little bit more juice coming in than I think you have with Arch Manning. I think you have with DJ Lagway. I think he has a little more juice there for his starting, even though he hasn't started in the conference. I just think that. And then Diego Pavia, I think, has proven that he can take over a game. I think the things about Diego Pavia that I think he should be ranked higher. I think Diego Pavia should be about probably 3 spots higher. I don't know that he's the number 1 guy. He certainly could be. I just think, I think you go Nussmeier, Mateer, Pavia, and you really could interchange Mateer and Pavia because they're kind of the same dude. Mateer is a little bit better of a downfield passer than Pavia is, which I think there's an edge there. But for the most part, impact-wise, it remains to be seen what impact Mateer has on Oklahoma. I know Sooner fans are very excited about that. But I think Diego Pavia, all the intangible stuff that he brings to the table, all of the leadership, all of the put you on your back and go, it's all there. And his playmaking ability, his ability to make guys miss and put guys in a blender, lose you in a phone booth, run you over, toughness, all that, I think was able to get this team on track when the talent gap was still very, very wide. And he was able to do things to get Vanderbilt in very favorable situations. You get them you get your offense ahead of the change. You start moving the change. You start contributing to that identity of ball control the clock and all that stuff. And it really, really put a psychological effect on a lot of teams, Alabama especially. Alabama did not know at all how to handle that. And so can he do it as a guy with a bullseye on his back? I think he absolutely can. And I think he would rather have the bullseye on his back. I think he thrives in that scenario. I think Diego Pavia is the perfect quarterback for what Vanderbilt wants to do with this renaissance. And I think he can set the tone for this program for years to come because he sets that leadership tone. He is the straw that stirs the drink. If I'm using that idiom correctly, he is the guy that gets it going. He's the guy that all other 10 guys in the huddle are looking at going, all right, Diego, what you got for us? Let's get it. And those guys play 10 times harder because number 2's in the huddle, right? They execute, they're on their job. He gets everybody focused. He is the guy. And I think you can't discount that. And I think that turned I don't know that Vanderbilt without Diego Pavia is a 7-win team. I don't know that they get to a bowl game. I don't know that without Diego Pavia they win on the road at Auburn. I think this offense kind of clicked as he clicked. I don't know that they pick up on the new system quite as fast. I don't know any of that. And it's just a thing of like, okay, this is kind of fortunate that we had this guy, and getting him back for a second year is even more of a blessing. So it's exciting to kind of see where this team will go. But as far as the top 6 quarterbacks, I just think Pavia and Mateer should be higher. I don't know that Arch Manning should be quite number 2. I like Lenore Sellers down at 3, and then I think you put Arch Manning at 6. I think you switch Arch Manning with Diego Pavia. You could bump Mateer above Pavia, put Pavia at 3, Lagway at 5, and Sellers at 4. I think you could do that, or flip Lagway and Sellers. I think any sort of order is good, but I think Diego Pavia should be ranked higher because he is the unequivocal MVP. We're talking about Vanderbilt is relevant because of Diego Pavia. So that's neither here nor there. Barton Simmons on the Ultimate College Football Show on 247 had a lot of things to say about Diego Pavia. He has this fan base. He has this fan base fired up. What is he saying to get this fan base fired up? Well, we're going to talk about all of that next. But first, it's all about Upwork, and scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. And with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. See, I'm fired up already. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. And finding the right talent is very easy. And if you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. And if the hiring is fast and easy, and posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. And you have cost-effective growth. So instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale my business efficiently. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. I appreciate you. I certainly do. You everydayers, you first timers, second timers. If you're a fan of another school and you're strolling on by, I appreciate you as well. Hopefully you stop in and take a gander. So this is a fun show, man. And this is list season, as Chris Gordy says. It's list season. It's time to discuss how did we get the list right? How did we get the list wrong? And we're certainly doing a lot of that. Speaking of Chris Gordy, if you need a second listen, check out Locked On SEC. He does a great job there, covering the best conference in all of the land. And if you need some other perspective, Stephen Willis is coming back very, very soon. So make sure you check him out, Locked On Ole Miss. He's number one in the Ole Miss market for a reason. So check him out. But speaking of number one, Barton Simmons used to work for 247. So he goes back to his old stomping grounds and he hops on the Ultimate College Football Show, and he has the fan base fired up, man. And I'm really digging this whole turnaround. And what stood out to me with what Barton was saying, and the more I thought about how Vanderbilt was building their roster and how all of this came about, and it's like, okay, nobody, only like the fans that are impatient were panicking about, the rebuild process, because rebuilding a program that's in the bottom of the barrel is not very, very easy at all, right? When they took over, it was, they won 3 games in 2 years, and all 3 of them in the first of those 2 years. So I don't know, man. It was a tough gig for Clark Lee, and it was going to be a tough gig for Clark Lee. And I think he's done a phenomenal job. And ultimately what Barton said today was that it was all part of the plan. Like, they were planning on year 4 being that year that it really turns the corner. And guess what? They were spot on. Everything they're saying is coming true. Everything they've built, the blueprint. It took a bit of an overhaul, and the road probably didn't look quite like he envisioned it was going to look. But ultimately, the destination to this point is the same, because you're like, okay, year 4 is going to be the year that you start to see this thing turn. It's going to be, if you could stay with us through year 4, we're kind of looking at it, and that's kind of how he envisioned it, and that's what apparently that's what they've been telling recruits when they first got on. And year 4 was this past season, where a lot of people were hell bent on Clark Lee should have been fired and all of that stuff. And honestly, and I could go on and do a whole show about this, but I'll only give you part of a segment on this topic, and I can expand on it because I got time later on throughout the year until football. But in an impatient world of college football, I'm glad that Vanderbilt was patient with Clark Lee. I'm very happy about that. I think that you could have, after 23, you could have fired him. I think you would have been justified in doing so. I think, as south as it went after a promising year 2 in 22, I think you had I think you were warranted in saying, okay, Clark, it just didn't work out. We gave you 3 years. Okay, here you go. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that, Clark Lee was able to lay out his vision. And I think this whole Vanderbilt staff was able to lay out their vision, this 4-year plan, this kind of roadmap that they had. I don't think he envisioned having to do a complete overhaul and all that stuff that he did. I think he probably saw it going a little differently, but nonetheless, here we are. We're coming into year 5 of the Clark Lee tenure, and we're talking about we may win 9 games. We have a superstar quarterback. Our roster is as loaded as loaded as it's ever been, and recruiting is at all-time high. PR is at all-time high. The stadium renovations are almost complete. You're going to have an environment that's bussing, right? All these great things happening within the program. I don't think anybody envisioned them except the people that truly matter. Like me not envisioning that probably doesn't matter. I did envision it. I did call Vanderbilt going to a bowl game. I did call them beating Virginia Tech. I did say that Diego Pavia was going to be a star, which that's not much of a stretch. That's not going out on a limb really, because he was a star against Auburn. So I'm not surprised, but I called all of that stuff. I said all that was going to come true. People were telling me to tap the brakes because I was saying Vandy was going to a bowl game. And people were like, Vandy be lucky to win 3 games. That's the response I was getting. Oh, you're just saying it because you host Locked On Vandy, right? No, I truly believe that. I think the moves of I believed in Clark Lee as a defensive coordinator because what I saw of him at Notre Dame, and when he decided to take over the defense, that stuck with me. I was like, okay, the last time he took over the defense at Vandy, they went 5-7. They had a couple of big upsets over Florida and Kentucky, who were really good teams at that time. He's taken over the defense, which I think is the right move. I think he gave up. I think he relinquished those duties a little too soon and a little too much. And he knew that too, which is, I think, why he made that move. Hiring Jerry Kill might have been the best thing to happen to him. When he did that, I knew it was on. I was like, okay, they're hiring Jerry Kill. This is special territory here. This is, and Tim Beck as well. And I think Tim Beck is a guy that's very unique in his play calling. I think he probably doesn't have much of I don't know how much of a reputation he has, but among fans and among like PR moves, like it's probably not the flashiest hire you can make, but I think it's effective because you want to be unique, and that's what he is. And you can tell why. And they assembled a staff. They got guys out of the portal. Now, I was thinking bowl game because I thought the talent was there enough to win 6 games. I didn't know how those 6 games were going to be won. I did not think Alabama was going to be one of those games. I'll admit that. But I knew there was a bowl game. I knew there was 6 wins in there somewhere. And they got those 6 wins, and then they won the bowl game to win that 7th. So this is a team that I think, had you not been patient with Clark Lee, I don't know that I don't know that Vanderbilt's just not continuing to chase their tail trying to find a coach when it's not really the coach. Honestly, it's somebody, and Clark Lee's a Vanderbilt guy, so he understands what's happening. He understands how to galvanize the fan base. He knows how to galvanize the university, get them behind him, and he's done a phenomenal job at doing that. At a place like Vanderbilt, it takes a little bit longer. I think people don't realize that. It takes some time. It takes some patience. It takes some reps. It takes some you're going to have some ups and downs at a place like Vanderbilt. And that's to be expected. But I think you're on the rise now. You've got a guy that wants to be here. And I think unless he gets a $20 million offer from Ohio State, I don't know that he's going anywhere. So, you got a guy that's an alumni. You got a guy that's wanting to be here. And so this is a very, very exciting times. And again, I'm glad they were patient with him, because in a world that's not patient, I think Vanderbilt's going to pay off. I think it's going to pay off for Vanderbilt to be patient, because, everybody's on board. I think they're getting really good press in the national media. I don't know that, people believe too much in the win totals because the schedule is kind of brutal, but they can do it. Diego Pavia can do it. I think this is a team that's poised for that. Again, it's a much more loaded roster, more loaded than it's ever been, of course. And here's a quote that got me fired up as well. What that Barton said. He said, "It's really important for us to strengthen our offensive line. He said, we got who we believe is the best quarterback in college football in Diego Pavia, and we need to get the offensive line right in front of him. We believe we can run the football on anybody. We believe in our offensive line to set that tone." And I said this in a show earlier, and I'll leave that quote up for a minute. I said this in an earlier episode about the offensive line and Clark Lee's philosophy on building in the trenches. It was an important move, and on defense too. I think that quote doesn't really signify that on the defense, but I think it's just as important. The defensive line is going to set the tone for the defense as much as the offensive line is going to set the tone for the offense. And saying that confirms that, it confirms what we already knew. Clark Lee is saying, hey, we got to put a premium on the offensive line. That goes without a doubt. And so this is something that is of utmost importance, and he's doing just that. So I'm really excited about this team. I'm really excited. Barton was talking about the 4-year plan, and year 4 we were telling these guys, and now we're recruiting at a high level, balancing the portal and NIL, and we're getting great guys in the defensive backfield. We're building in spots that Vanderbilt doesn't normally do well building in, and that's offensive line and defensive back. So there's a lot of things to be excited about. I think the confidence is at an all-time high, and I think this program is somebody that can be viable, a program that can be viable. And their goals, and he said their goals is to get NFL-ready football players, and their goal is to win games, and their goal is to get in the college football playoff. And that's not always been the case at Vanderbilt. And people will say that, but deep down it's like, okay, no, our goal is to just not win only, is to win more than 2 games. Like that's, it just feels like that, the goals have changed now, and the goals are actually like, okay, we believe that we can be, because Vanderbilt's never really believed that they could be that kind of team, but I think they're finally believing. I think a lot of credibility when Clark Lee's like, here's a 4-year plan. I think there was a lot of credibility in that fact of, hey, it happened in year 4. He was right. The road wasn't quite what he envisioned it, and probably not, but he was right in saying this team's going to be different. This program is going to be different by year 4. It has been, and now people are starting to see that. Now people are going, oh, maybe he was right. And here we go. So baseball just dropped a midweeker at Louisville. Very good game. As I'm recording this, they just dropped it 5-4. We'll briefly talk about it here in just a second. Stay tuned. But first, if you betted on it on FanDuel, you probably didn't win your $200 in bonus bets, but that's okay because the NBA playoffs are in full swing and every night delivers a highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's game-winning shot or breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. So here's the thing, man. I love doing the live prop bets in mid-game based on how the action unfolds. I don't know enough about the NBA, honestly, to know kind of what props to bet on. So I kind of see how the game is going and see how the trend is going before I really make a decision on, okay, I'm going to take Anthony Edwards to snag 10 rebounds or whatever the case may be. Or I'm, Golden State might have been, a 7.5 point favorite. Now the odds of, they're beating the crap out of, I don't even know who they're playing, but I think it's the Rockets. If they're beating the crap out of the Rockets now, that line is pushed to 10.5. Maybe I'm going to take the trend and take them to cover that. So whatever the case may be, that's what I love to do, the live betting on sports that I'm not familiar with, because I can kind of follow the trend of how the game is going, and I don't necessarily have to be an expert on the roster. So I'm really good at that. So, but there's nothing like hitting a $5 bet that's going to net me $200 in bonus bets. I mean, there's nothing like that feeling, and that's why you play. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up, because head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If that wins, like I said earlier, you get $200 in bonus bets. So make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, wrapping up the game here. Wrapping up the show. Locked on Vandy, at Locked on Vandy on all social media platforms if you want to follow. Baseball just wrapped. Speaking of games, they just wrapped against Louisville. Louisville was victorious 5-4. Vanderbilt was in it all the way. They tied it up on a couple of occasions. McIlvain, I think, had a really tough outing again. I don't know what to make of that. I'm not sure that McIlvain is the answer. Honestly, I don't think he's ever going to pull out of this slump that he's in and whatever. That he's in some sort of funk pitching wise. I'm not real sure, but he's got to pull out of it. But because and he didn't get help. Errors didn't help either. There was a couple of errors in his outing that netted 3 runs and ultimately. And so I just think that kind of gave the momentum to Louisville. Vanderbilt tried to come back. They just couldn't do it. It just too little too late. And honestly, Louisville's a good team. Like they made the plays. They got the clutch hits. They did the things they needed to do to push that game ahead. So is this like trouble for Tim Corbin? I don't think so. I think Vandy's still in line, perfect line to host a regional, which I think they're saying Xavier is going to be in that regional, which I don't love that, but I think everything gears up for the important series on the road at Tennessee this coming weekend. That's going to be, Tony Vitello is, he's a fireball, man. But this Tennessee team is very good. and it's just like any other SEC team. It's a freaking gauntlet, man. And so I think you just got to figure out, okay, what do we do well in this game? I think we were able to hit in some clutch situations. Pitching wise, I think you get yourself in trouble when you get walks and, you give up a 2-out bases clearing double. You make a couple of errors out there in the field, and I think you just I think Vandy sometimes just gets themselves into trouble with little things. And then once you get runners in scoring position, you make a mistake, the other team makes you pay. Next thing you know, you're down like 5-2 just in the blink of an eye. So it's nothing to panic about. That's the sport of baseball, but I think you've got to fix some of these little things. Like I think the focus on fielding and not making errors and things like that. I think you've got to clean that up a little bit if you're going to win at a consistent level in regionals, super regionals, and ultimately Omaha. So that's all I got today. I think as a Vanderbilt athletics fan, you should be fired up. I know that, as somebody who supports it and somebody who really enjoys watching Vanderbilt play sports, I think I'm fired up. And it's going to be a lot of fun with this football team. And I just think if you're skeptical, just enjoy the ride, man, because it's going to be incredible. So just at least enjoy the ride while you have it, because you never know with Vanderbilt. It could all come crumbling down at some point. With any college football team, really, it could all come crumbling down at a certain point. So just enjoy it while you can. But until next time, anchor down. Behave yourselves. Peace.